Inbound versus outbound. Which lead gen strategy wins? Why the inbound versus outbound debate won't die. If you've ever watched marketing argue for content budget, while sales pushes to hire SDRs, you've seen the same fight in different clothes. Inbound versus outbound. Marketing wants compounding demand. Sales wants predictable meetings and pipeline this quarter. In 2025, the mistake isn't choosing a side. It's treating these motions like competing religions instead of complementary tools. The data explains why both teams feel right. Inbound can generate leads at roughly 62% lower cost and produce about 54% more leads. But it takes time to ramp because it depends on content, rankings, and brand demand. Outbound costs more per lead, yet it gives you control. You can pick accounts, pick personas, and start conversations even when the market isn't searching. The practical goal is pipeline coverage, not channel bragging rights. When we align inbound and outbound around one ICP, one narrative, and shared pipeline targets, we reduce internal friction and create a repeatable system. Inbound warms the market, and outbound creates precision conversations where we need them most. What inbound and outbound really mean in modern B2B? Inbound lead generation is everything that attracts buyers who are already researching a problem and nudges them to raise their hand, typically through SEO, content, webinars, calculators, and paid campaigns that educate before they sell. The reason inbound leads feel better is context. The buyer shows up with intent, familiarity, and a timeline that's already in motion. Outbound lead generation is everything that initiates the conversation. Cold email, LinkedIn outreach, and especially B2B cold calling, before a prospect has explicitly asked to talk. A strong outbound sales agency approach isn't about blasting. It's about targeted, relevant outreach into named accounts with a clear problem hypothesis and a crisp ask that earns a reply. The buyer journey ties them together. Buyers often complete 50 to 90% of their decision before they talk to sales and consume an average of 13 pieces of content along the way, which means your inbound footprint sets the stage for every outbound touch. If your website, positioning, and proof aren't strong, outbound becomes harder. If your outbound never converts anonymous interest into conversations, inbound stays stuck as traffic instead of pipeline. The numbers: cost, speed, and conversion, where each channel wins. On efficiency, inbound usually wins early on paper, lower cost per lead, and more top-of-funnel volume. That's why many teams see inbound as the cheaper engine, because it often is, with costs reported around 62% lower per lead and lead volume roughly 54% higher compared with outbound-heavy approaches. The trade-off is time. Meaningful inbound performance in B2B commonly takes months of consistent execution before it's dependable. On conversion, inbound typically wins even harder because intent is built in. Organic search leads are often cited as closing at about 14.6% versus roughly 1.7% for traditional outbound sourced leads. And over 80% of B2B marketers report inbound leads are higher quality. This is exactly why we advise routing high-intent inbound, demo requests, high-fit pricing views, strong product signals, directly to closers with tight SLAs, rather than letting those leads sit in a generic SDR queue. Outbound still matters because speed and control matter. Even with inbox fatigue, between 49 to 78% of B2B decision makers say they're open to cold calls when the outreach is relevant. And around 60% say sales conversations influence purchase decisions. Proof that cold callers aren't obsolete, only sloppy outreach is. The most useful way to view the data is side by side. when inbound wins, when outbound wins, and how to decide. Inbound tends to win when you need scalable, efficient demand, and your market searches for what you sell. If your team can invest for the long term, inbound becomes a compounding asset that improves win rates and reduces CAC over time, especially when your content matches the decision makers you sell to and your conversion paths are designed around intent, not vanity downloads. Outbound tends to win when you need pipeline coverage now. You're entering a new vertical, or you have a defined list of strategic accounts you must land. It's also a strong fit for high ACV motions where a few enterprise deals can change the quarter, and where a disciplined outbound program, cold email agency support, B2B cold calling services, and multi-touch sequencing can consistently create conversations that inbound might never surface on its own. The decision framework we like is simple. Optimize for CAC payback and pipeline timing, not just cheap leads. Many teams split budgets roughly 50-50 or 60-40, inbound heavy, once they have traction. But earlier stage companies often skew outbound until inbound matures. If you want a grounded starting point, compare your last 6 to 12 months of opportunities by source, inbound versus outbound. Then look at win rate, ACV, and sales cycle by channel before you decide where the next dollar goes. Stop treating inbound and outbound like competing religions. Inbound is your compounding demand engine. Outbound is your precision tool for named accounts and gaps. How to build an all-bound engine that doesn't create internal channel wars. The all-bound model works because it removes the false choice and forces alignment. Instead of marketing goals versus sales goals, we recommend one shared number, sales qualified pipeline or revenue, and one shared ICP that drives both content strategy and outbound targeting. When inbound and outbound speak to different audiences, you don't get diversification, you get confusion and a leaky funnel. Operationally, allbound starts with routing and speed. High-intent inbound should go to closers fast, minutes, not days, while SDRs specialize in outbound prospecting and structured follow-up for mid-intent inbound, webinar attendees, repeat site visitors, content engagement. This specialization prevents a common failure mode where SDRs spend all day chasing inbound and quietly abandon outbound, which looks fine in the short term and then crushes pipeline in the next quarter. Treat outbound as a learning lab, not just a meeting factory. Replies and call outcomes tell you what objections are real, which pain points resonate, and what language your market actually uses. Intel you can feed back into SEO pages, ads, and enablement. When outbound is designed for learning, it improves inbound conversion and win rates instead of competing with them for credit. Outbound execution in 2025. Relevance, deliverability, and realistic benchmarks. Outbound still works, but only when it respects the buyer. That means tighter targeting, better data, clearer offers, and multi-channel sequencing that includes cold call services and thoughtful email touches without turning into spam. If you're evaluating cold calling companies or an SDR agency, ask how they handle list building services, deliverability, and message testing, because those are the hidden levers that determine whether your program performs or flatlines. Benchmarking matters because it keeps teams from chasing fantasy metrics. Modern outbound programs often plan around 3 to 5% cold email reply rates and about 1 to 2 meetings per 100 dials as a baseline. Then iterate on segments, offers, and talk tracks every quarter. The biggest outbound mistake we see is trying to fix performance by sending more volume rather than improving targeting and relevance. Here's a simple benchmark table we use to keep expectations grounded and to spot when the real problem is list quality, positioning, or execution rather than effort. How to measure inbound versus outbound fairly and avoid bad decisions. Comparing inbound and outbound on cost per lead alone is how teams end up underinvesting in the channel that actually grows revenue. Inbound often looks like the efficiency engine, lower CPL, higher conversion, while outbound can be the growth throttle, faster account penetration, and, in many cases, higher ACV. The fair comparison is full funnel, lead volume, MQL SQL rate, opportunity rate, win rate, ACV, sales cycle, and, most importantly, CAC payback and LTV CAC. A second common mistake is attribution politics. Whichever channel gets last touch claims the win, and the other team disengages. The fix is shared pipeline targets and integrated reporting that shows how inbound exposure changes outbound performance, because in real buying journeys, most deals involve both. When your outbound team targets an account and the prospect has already consumed content, scanned reviews, or visited your site, that cold touch isn't truly cold. Finally, be honest about operational complexity. Building an in-house SDR function means hiring, training, tech, data, and management. Sales outsourcing can be a faster path when you need pipeline quickly or don't want to build everything from scratch. As a reference point, SalesHive, SalesHive.com, has booked over 117,000K B2B meetings for 1,500 plus clients, which is why many teams evaluate an outsourced sales team or B2B sales outsourcing partner before they decide to hire SDRs internally. Next steps: a practical 30-day plan to move from debate to pipeline. Start with an audit that forces clarity. Pull the last 6 to 12 months of opportunities and revenue. Tag each by primary source, inbound versus outbound, and compare win rate, ACV, and sales cycle, not just lead counts. This immediately shows whether inbound is truly your efficiency engine, whether outbound is delivering strategic logos, or whether one channel is propping up the other without being credited. Then, lock alignment into your operating system. Define a shared ICP and target account list. Set SLAs for response times, especially on high-intent inbound, and implement segmented follow-up plays based on intent so you're not treating every download like a demo request. If outbound performance is inconsistent, modernize the stack, data verification, sequencing, deliverability, and run quarterly testing sprints on lists, offers, and messaging. The 2025 reality is that the best teams don't pick a side, they build allbound. Organizations running both motions are associated with about 27% faster revenue growth and up to 40% lower acquisition costs compared to single-channel approaches, which is why we view inbound and outbound as one engine with two pedals. Whether you build internally, partner with a sales development agency, or use a hybrid model, the winning move is the same: unify the narrative, unify the targets, and execute with discipline.